us try to understand what is operating system scheduler. Before that, let us try to recall what we discussed in last couple of classes. So we try to understand the execution of process, right? In particular, we try to understand the low-level mechanisms of how operating system run a process and what happens when the user makes a system call and what happens when the CPU change from one process to the other process. That is, we try to understand what is context switch, right? So when how the process is executed, the first thing what operating system does is it allocates the memory image, right? It allocates the memory and creates the memory image for each process. So the memory image consists of code, data, stack, and heap. And then the operating system will set up CPU, right? The operating system will set up PC, data register, stack pointer. Then after operating system sets up memory image and then CPU, the operating system is just out of the way. Now the process directly executed on the CPU, right? And we also discussed about a simple function call, right? So in the code segment, in the user code segment, you write a code which has multiple line of instructions, and when you make a function call, currently the PC is pointing to the function call. Let's say that line of instruction is 2. In the line 2, you have a function call instruction. Now the PC is pointing to this. Therefore, the CPU will execute the line 2. Now, when you make a function call, the code for the function call available somewhere in 150th line. Therefore, the PC will try to point the line 150. Then the CPU will execute the code of the function. Now, when this happens, in the stack, you store the old PC value, right? That is the line 2. That value is stored in stack. Just we need to go back after the CPU completes the execution of the functions instruction, right? And we also discussed about a system call, how system call is different from function call, right? Now you have a user code and you have a kernel code, right? When CPU is executing user code, in the code, the user have invoked system call. When CPU executes this system call instruction, then the CPU change the mode from the user to the kernel mode. Okay. Now, when it changes, okay, when the CPU change the mode from user to kernel, in the kernel stack, the operating system stores the last PC in the user mode. Okay, in the kernel stack, the operating system stores the last PC value in the user code. Therefore, when the kernel mode, when the CPU completes the execution of system call, then it has to go back to the user mode to resume the execution from where it is stopped. Okay, so when the CPU changes from the kernel mode to the user mode, the privilege level of CPU also changes, right? And when CPU executes the kernel code, the CPU do not depend the user to provide the address. Instead, the kernel will have a separate table called interrupt descriptor table. Now this table will have all informations, all address. Okay, it has an address of all the system calls. Now in the user program, if the user invoke write system call, then this IDT table will have an address of write system call. Therefore, the CPU directly jump to that address and it will execute that. Okay, fine. So we also try to understand what is trap instruction, right? So when system call is made, the CPU changes from user mode to the kernel mode, right? So when CPU change from the user mode to the kernel mode, the CPU move to higher privilege level, right? And now when CPU in kernel mode, we point to the stack pointer, the stack frame of the kernel mode, right? In the kernel mode, in the kernel stack, we save the old PC value and so on, right? Fine. And what are the different situations where the trap instruction is executed? When the system call occurs, that is when the user program needs operating system service, then the trap instruction is executed. That is the CPU changes from the user mode to the kernel mode, and it save all the uh, old PC value in the stack of kernel. Okay, and when the program fault occurs, that is when the program does something illegal, then the operating system comes into the picture to solve this, right? That time the trap instruction occurs, and there is an interrupt. That is when the external devices need an attention of operating system. That is when we type a keyboard or when the data is arrived to the network card, that time operating system comes into the picture, then executes the trap instruction, right? And once we call the trap instruction, after the system call is executed, the CPU has to move from the kernel mode to the user mode, right? To move from kernel mode to the user mode, we call a special instruction called return from trap, right? Now the question is, when the CPU move from the user mode to the kernel mode, after the execution of system call, we need to return from the kernel mode to the user mode. Now, we must return to the same process, or we can move to the different process.
So we can move to the different process.
Yeah, the operating system can move to the different process. Okay. Now we also discussed why the switch between processes, right? Now when the operating system is in the kernel mode, it cannot return back to the same process, right? In the user mode, when CPU executes the user mode, you make a system call. Therefore, the CPU comes to the kernel mode. After execution of system call, the operating system will not come back to the same process. Okay, will not come back to the same process where it stopped the execution. Okay, that happens because of multiple reasons. It cannot move to the same process for multiple reasons. One is uh, the process may be terminated because of segmentation fault. Therefore, the process is no longer available for the execution. In that point of time, operating system do not go back to the same process. Or when the process made a blocking system call, that is, the process needs some data from the disk. Therefore, the process went to the blocking state. At that point of time, operating system will not go back to the same process, right? And sometimes the operating system decides, I don't want to return to the same process for the reason like the particular process have run for the longer period of time. Therefore, operating system decides, I don't want to go back to the same process. Let me go to the different process for the execution, because operating system takes care of time share the CPU with multiple processes, right? So the operating system performs a context switch from one process to the other process. Okay, fine. So now uh, let us try to understand what is operating system scheduler. Now, what do you mean by this? Do you have any idea? What do you mean by OS scheduler? Please be interactive.
Means scheduling the task which have maximum. There are lots of tasks. So for working it, it schedules the task to one by one.
Okay, okay, good. Now let us try to understand what exactly the operating system scheduler is. Now the OS scheduler has two important parts. One is policy, other one is mechanism. Now what do you mean by policy here? When you have the multiple process P1 to Pn in the system, now once you decided to switch, which process I need to switch? Right? I have n process ready to run. Which one I should pick for the execution? Right? This we'll discuss later. Okay. Now let us try to understand what is mechanism here. I repeat, what do you mean by policy? If we have an n process ready for the execution in the system, we need to pick one process for the execution. Right? So for this we have different policies. We'll discuss that later. But now let us try to understand what is mechanism. Now what do you mean by mechanism here? What do you mean by mechanism?
Switch to that process.
Okay, let's say that you have process A and process B. Okay, now you decided to switch from the process A to the process B. Now how we can do this? How we can do this? Okay, so we'll try to understand this mechanism of context switch. So there are different types of schedulers. Okay, let me tell you that in the operating system scheduler, you have two parts. In the code of operating system scheduler, you have two parts. One is policy, other one is mechanism. The policy decides which process to pick among the active process. That is called policy. Now mechanism is how to move from one process, how to switch from one process to the other process. Okay. Now we have we have different types of schedulers. One set of schedulers are called non-preemptive. What do you mean by this? We have different types of scheduler. One set of scheduler called cooperative or non-preemptive. What do you mean by this?
Non-preemptive means no high priority task comes. Means it's
Okay, good. Please read this sentence. Switch only if the process blocked or terminated. What do you mean by that? And this process these schedulers are polite. Okay, so you have multiple process P1, P2, P3. Now, this scheduler, non-preemptive scheduler, will switch the process only if the process cannot run. Got the point? Non-preemptive scheduler will switch from one process to the, let's say that you want to switch from the process P1 to P2. You want to switch from process P1 to P2. The non-preemptive scheduler will not switch until and then the process P1 cannot execute. Only in that situation, this scheduler, non-preemptive scheduler, will switch from process P1 to P2. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, fine. That is when the process is terminated, when the process P1 is terminated, or when the process P1 is blocked, only in that situation, this scheduler will move from process P1 to P2. Okay. The next scheduler is called preemptive, non-cooperative scheduler. What do you mean by this? What do you mean by this? What do you mean by non-cooperative?
Sir, it means that even if the process can be executed, then also it can switch from one process to another.
Good, good. Now this scheduler, non-preemptive scheduler, does the context switch even if the process P1 is ready to run. Okay, in the case of non-preemptive, only when the process P1 terminated or blocked, only in that case the scheduler, non-preemptive scheduler, move from process P1 to P2. But in the case of preemptive scheduler, the preemptive scheduler, makes a context switch from P1 to P2 even the process P1 is ready to run. Okay, how that happened? The CPU periodically generates a timer interrupt. Okay, we can set what time is the periodically the CPU caution interrupt. Okay, periodically the CPU causes an interrupt and calls the operating system to come into the play. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, is the operating system scheduler same as the CPU scheduler?
Operating system scheduler is same as a
CPU scheduler.
yeah. Here, who does this scheduling? Everything is set up by operating system. So we call that as an operating system scheduler.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, CPU only executes the instruction, but all of the schedules, we have a look at the first point, OS scheduler, right? So operating system has a scheduler code, and that scheduler code have two parts. One is policy, other one is mechanism. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Okay, fine. Now, how this executes? Can you read the last point? Can you read the last point in the slide?
After service interrupt, OS checks if the current process has run for too long.
What do you mean by this? Okay, now let us try to understand.
Means is terminated if process has running for too long times.
Okay, good. Now the CPU, okay, periodically, right? The CPU generates the timer interrupt periodically. That means that we can set a time in the CPU. Therefore, the CPU causes interrupt. Let's say that you set a time 1 millisecond. So for every 1 millisecond, the CPU interrupts. Now, if there is an interruption, which one comes to play? If there is a timer interrupts, who is going to check that? Who has the responsibility to check the interrupts?
Non-preemptive.
Operating system checks, right? You have seen here, please connect to all of the lectures. When the trap instruction executes, that is operating system code executes, when the interrupt occurs, right? So when the CPU makes an interrupt, then who comes into the play?
Operating system.
OS.
Good. Operating system comes to the play. right? Now what operating system checks?
Current process is running for too long or no, or short.
Yeah, good. Now you have a user process P1. Okay, this process is ready to run. This process is ready to run. It is not blocked. It is not terminated. But the operating system can say that you have run for too long. Let me go and switch to the some other process. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Yeah, fine, good. So these are the two different schedulers. One is non-preemptive, other one is preemptive. Everyone understand the difference between these two?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, in the case of preemptive, the CPU interrupts for certain period of time. In the case of non-preemptive, only when the process cannot run. What are the different situations the process cannot run? What are the different situations the process cannot run?
So when it requires the data from the disk, or if it has executed its last line.
Good. Whether it is terminated or it is blocked. Only in those cases, uh, in the case of non-preemptive, the CPU move from a switch from one process to the other process. Okay, all right, good. So let us now try to understand what is a context switch mechanism. So everyone okay with this as of now? No confusion, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
good. Now, let's say that process A is running. Now, when process A is running, the operating system went to the kernel mode. Okay, when the process A is running, the CPU executes process A. Because of interrupt, the CPU went to the kernel mode. Now, now the operating system decides that I want to go back to the user mode of A, or I want to switch to some other process B. Okay, you understand this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, let me repeat. When the CPU executes the process A, because of interrupt or because of system call, the CPU goes to the kernel mode. Now in the kernel mode, it executes the operating system code. Now the operating system decides whether I want to go back to the process A, or I want to go back to the other process B. Now this context switch, how this happens? The operating system decides to go back to the process B. Now how this context switch happens? Can you tell me? Do you have any idea how the operating system makes a context switch from the process A to process B? Okay, all right. So let me ask you some questions and then we'll go one by one. So now we have a CPU and we have an user program, user code, that is process A. Okay. Okay, we have, this is an user mode and we have process A and this is kernel mode. Okay. Now, if the process A makes a system call, what CPU does?
It changes from user mode to the kernel mode.
Good. Now look at this. The process A have a memory image. When the CPU executing process A in the user mode, in the code, when it makes a system call, the CPU moves to the kernel mode of process A. Okay, in the kernel mode, you have a memory image for the process A. It moves to the kernel mode of process A. Okay, now once CPU move to the kernel mode, now we are in the operating system control, right? Now, when we move from user mode to the kernel mode, what happens? What you store in the kernel stack?
Old value of PC.
Yeah, we in the kernel stack of process A, in the kernel stack of process A, we store old PC value. That means what? Where we stop the execution, at which point of instruction, because PC is pointing to that instruction, right, for the execution. At that point, in that instruction, you make a system call, therefore the CPU come to user mode. So the PC points to that instruction, that value, that address will be stored in the stack of kernel process A. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now in the kernel mode, you have a stack pointer. Now the stack pointer is point to the kernel pointer points to the PC value of which process?
Process
A.
A.
Yeah, good. Process A, right? Good. Now the stack pointer points to the kernel stack of A. Then what we do? We need to switch. The operating system decides to switch to the other process. So what we do? So in the kernel mode, we have a memory image of process B. Okay, let's say that we have a memory image of process B. Now our operating system decides to move from process A to process B. So what it does, you have a stack pointer. Initially, the stack pointer points to the kernel stack of A. When the operating system decides to move from process A to process B, then the stack pointer will be pointing to the process B. Will be pointing to the stack
Yes, sir.
of the process B. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now the question is, who has saved the registers on process B kernel stack? The operating system makes the stack pointer to point to the kernel stack of process B. Now, who set all of these registers PC of B, of process B?
OS.
Okay, sometimes in the past, the operating system has executed the process B. Okay, because the operating system time shares among the process, right? Sometime in the past, the operating system has executed the process B. When it lastly executed the process B, at that point it saved all the contacts of process B in the kernel stack. Okay. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. That is, in the past, the operating system has executed the process B for some time, and at that point of time, operating system said enough of executing process B. So when it moved from process B to some other process, it has stored all the context in the kernel stack of process B. Okay. Fine. So from wherever it is stopped, when the SP stack pointer pointing to the stack of B, then it is going to start the execution from where it has stopped in the past. Okay. All right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now the CPU executes in the kernel mode. If you want to go back to the user mode of process B, if you want to go back to the user mode of process B, what instruction you call?
Return from trap.
Good. We call a return from trap instruction. Therefore, the CPU move to the user mode and then it will execute the process B from where it is stopped. All right. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Everyone understand this?
Yes, sir.
Please let me know
Sir.
if you're not understood, please let me know. I do not mind to repeat because this is important concept. You need to understand how operating system move from one process to the other process. Is that okay? Can we move to the next topic?
Sir, can you please
Yes, sir.
explain it again?
Sorry. Can you tell me now?
Sir, can you please explain it again, sir?
Okay. All right. All right. Fine. So please be attentive. Okay. Now what we discussed is now let me tell you. I hope you all know this. You have CPU, you have user mode, and you have kernel mode. Okay. Now in the user mode, you have a memory image for the process A, and you have a memory image for process B, process C, process D, and so on. Similarly, in the kernel mode, in the operating system mode, kernel is nothing but operating system. In the operating system mode, you have a kernel stack of a memory image of A, B, C, D. Okay. For the process A, you have a memory image in the user. For the process A, you have a memory image in the kernel mode. Right. Now, when you execute process A, okay, you have an instruction. When you execute the instruction, somewhere you made a system call. This is one reason, right? When you invoke system call in the program, the CPU change from the user mode to the kernel mode, right? So when it changes from the user mode to the kernel mode, in the kernel mode for the process A, you have a memory image, right? In that memory image, you have a stack, right? Let's say that at line 50th, at line 50, user has invoked system call. So when CPU executes this system call, then to execute the system call, the CPU need more privilege level, right? Therefore, the CPU move from user mode to the kernel mode. When it moved to the kernel mode, it saved the PC. It saved the PC value, right? Because the PC points to the line 50, that value will be stored in the stack of the kernel stack, will be stored in the kernel stack of process A. Okay. Now in the kernel mode, you have a stack pointer. That stack pointer currently points to the stack of the process A. Okay. Now similar to that, for the process B, you have a stack which has a code data stack. Okay. Now the operating system decides to switch from the process A to the process B. Okay. Now what it does is it makes SP stack pointer to point to the stack of process B. Now what you have, what information you have in the process B, in the stack of the process B, what information you have? In the process B stack, what information you will have?
So, data.
In the stack, what information you will have? Please don't disappoint.
PC values.
Yeah, we have a PC value of which process?
A, process A.
We are dealing with process B memory image. Okay, the stack will have a PC value of process B. Okay, process B, because the stack pointer is pointed to the stack of the process B, right? Now, who have saved this? Who have saved the stack of the process B? Who has saved the registers on
OS.
Yes, operating system done this, right? In the past, operating system has executed the process B, right? When it said, I am enough executing process B, that point of time, it has stored the last PC value in the kernel stack of process B, right? Now the stack pointer is pointed to the stack of the process B. Therefore, operating system decides to execute the process B now. Okay. All right.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, what if the process B has been never executed? Then how will the old
never-
value be stored?
Never executed, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. If it is never executed, then the old value will not be stored. That case will
Okay,
not
sir.
happen. That case will not happen because operating system has a responsibility to time share the CPU among the multiple processes. At some point of time, at least for certain milliseconds, the process has been executed.
Okay, sir.
Okay, fine. So when if you want to make the CPU to go from the kernel mode to the user mode, what special instruction you execute?
Return from trap.
Good. We execute return from trap instruction. Therefore, the CPU move from process B of the kernel stack to the process B of the user mode. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Good.
sir.
So everyone understand now?
Yes, sir.
Anash, is that fine with you?
Yes, sir.
Good. Okay. Now we know what is context, right? What do you mean by context? What do
PC
you
and
mean?
other CPU registers.
Good. A context is a program counter and various CPU registers. That is the stack pointer, data registers of the current process. That we call it as context, right? Now the question is, what are the different scenario this context are saved? What are the two different scenarios that the context of your process or saved? Can you recall?
When going from user mode to kernel mode.
Okay.
And the
Okay.
stack saves the old PC values.
Okay. Okay, fine. So there are two different scenarios where we save a context of the process. The first scenario is when we go from the user mode to the kernel mode. Okay, when we go from the user mode to the kernel mode of a process, we save the context, right? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So what is the other scenario?
So when we switch from one process to another.
Good. The second scenario where we store the context is we have moved from the user to the kernel mode, right? And now we are in the operating system mode. We are in the kernel mode. Now the operating system decides to move from kernel mode of process A to the kernel mode of process B. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So these are the two different scenarios where we store the context of a process. Fine. So everyone understand this? The low level mechanisms of execution of process, what is the mechanism of system call, and the mechanism of context switch. Everyone understand this?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now let us try to understand what is scheduling policies. Okay. So when we discuss operating system scheduler, right? I said the scheduler has two parts. One is policy, other one is mechanism, right? Now we understood what is mechanism of context switch. Now let us try to understand what is scheduling policy, right? So do you have any idea on this? What do you mean by scheduling policy?
Which process is to be selected from multiple processes?
Good. A scheduling policy is a piece of code. This code decides which process, which process to run next, right? Once we decided to make a context switch, which of the process to be selected for run, okay? Once we decided to make a context switch, which process to run next, that is decided by the policy of the schedulers. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now look at the second bullet point. What does real operating system scheduler does? What the scheduler does?
Schedules the CPU request.
Okay. What do you mean by bursts? Burst. The real operating system scheduler does CPU burst. What do you mean by that?
CPU
What?
time used by a process in a continuous
Okay.
stretch.
Yeah. What do you mean by CPU burst? That is, when the process comes for the execution, it runs for a certain continuous duration in the CPU. That we call it as CPU burst. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. Now, the scheduler have different goal. It has a different goals. That is, the scheduler try to optimize. Now, what we are trying to optimize here? the CPU, the scheduler, has certain goals that it try to optimize. What are those?
To run the code in a short duration, something.
Okay, the first goal is maximize. The first bullet point. What do you mean by that? Okay, first the scheduler, the code of the scheduler will try to utilize the CPU to maximum level. It tries to make sure that the CPU is fully used as far as possible. Okay, the second goal is it try to minimize the average turnaround time. It try to minimize average. What do you mean by turnaround time?
So the complete time, like from starting to completion.
Good. The turnaround time is from the time the process is created and comes into the system, okay, and to complete the execution is called turnaround time. Okay, from the time the process is created and the time it complete the execution, the process arrival to the completion, that we call it as turnaround time. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now the goal of scheduler is we need to minimize the turnaround time. That is, it makes sure that the process is not waiting for too long in the CPU. Right? Okay. Fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. The third point is it try to minimize the response time. What do you mean by response time? The time of the process arrived for the first scheduling. Okay. Now, what is the difference between turnaround time and the response time? Can you tell me?
So turnaround time is complete time and response is when it arrives to just scheduling, not complete.
Yeah. A turnaround time is the time from the arrival to the completion. That is a turnaround time. The response time is the time is arrived to begin the execution. Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
The fourth goal of a scheduler is fairness. What do you mean by this? The scheduler need to be fair enough. The scheduler should make sure that all the process get the time eventually. Okay, fine. The last important job of scheduler code is minimize overhead. Can you tell me what you mean by minimize overhead? If you give me a brief explanation for this, it will be very good. What do you mean by minimize overhead? Here you have a contact switch. Can you please tell me what is this? Yes. What is overhead? Okay, so when the operating system decide to contact switch from process A to process B, what happens? If you move from process A to process B, what is the mechanism? Come on guys, don't disappoint.
So the stack pointer that is pointing to the kernel mode of the process A shifts to the process B.
Okay, good. That we call it as context switch, right? To make sure to this context switch to happen, at least it need less than 1 microsecond. Okay, when operating system makes a context switch from one process to the other process, it takes a minimum or less than 1 microsecond. Now can you relate what is minimized overhead? When we switch from one process to the other process, the operating system makes a context switch. When we make a context switch, we need to save the PC of the process in the stack. So all this takes some time, and we want to minimize the overhead. That is, we don't want to switch the process in too much. What happens if you do the switch from one process to other process continuously? What will happen?
So the time will be wasted.
Yeah, you need to have, every time when you make a context switch, you need less than 1 microsecond. Now, if you make multiple context switches over the period of time, then it takes good amount of time for making a context switch. So therefore, we want the process to run for the longer enough period, right? Okay, therefore we try to minimize overhead. If you run the process for a longer period of time, therefore we try to avoid the context switch. Therefore, the execution time get reduced.
Sir, so here the total process is running in the process A, right? Like without context switch in only one process, the total
Yeah.
code is executing.
Yeah, the total code is executing. But here the point is the operating system should not make a switch continuously. Only if it is required, it has to make a context switch.
Okay, sir.
Okay, fine. So,
And sir,
yeah, please go ahead.
what is that amortized cost of, like when we are switching from A to B?
Yeah, here amortized cost is the time taken by the operating system to switch from the process A to process B.
So basically, it's time and the
Yeah, time. Yeah, time. Yeah, that's what I meant here as cost. Okay. So, any further questions to ask?
No, sir.
Good. So, we'll end here. In tomorrow class on Tuesday, we will try to understand what are different scheduler algorithms, and we'll try to do some numerical on this. Okay, fine. So let me end here. Before that, I request you to complete the quiz. Do you have any questions to ask?
No, sir.
Okay. So please go back to the slide and understand the mechanism of context switch and read what is context.
Sir, are we on module 3 or?
Sorry?
Sir, I'm asking about the module number.
Yeah. We are some sort to that.
Module 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you can correlate with all the topics we have covered enough, I believe.
Sure, it feels a little bit fast actually. That's
Okay, fine. Because the scheduler need more time because you have multiple algorithms and we'll try to understand the numerical part of that. At least we need 2 more class for that. Okay, so if we have enough time, we will definitely revise the topics which you want me to teach again.
Sir, is the entire module is finished of 1 to?
As of now, we no need to think about it. Okay, let me. You have notes for all the topic what we discussed. Once the examination comes, let us try to see about module 1, module 2, and so on.
Okay, sir.
Okay, fine. All right. So please complete the quiz. If there is no further question, can we end for the day?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Good. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you,
Complete
sir.
the, yeah. Please complete the quiz.